I'm a secondary school teacher, actually day to day. I've been excused for the morning. I work at Perin School over in Alsford, and I'm team leader, there's only two of us, but for ICT and what's now kind of called computing, except it's going to take a long time for everything to kind of move over. But perhaps more relevant today is the work I do for a group called Computing at School, which I hope some or many of you have heard of. Back in 2011, I got involved as a hub leader, which is about setting up an event where like-minded teachers can get together and talk about computing compared with ICT, and to share ideas, share resources, ask each other questions. So I've been doing that for a while, and then I'm quite proud that in 2012 I was appointed one of the first Computing at School Master Teachers, a job that requires you to do more work with no more money or time. But it's still quite a nice opportunity to do things like this, come speak to teachers who may be new to the computing curriculum, that's just come in, or looking for help, and offer a bit. So you can get in touch with me if you want through Twitter. I found that to be a really good professional networking tool after I picked my username, which is actually, first of all, an anagram of Daniel Gardner, and secondly, my Xbox Live username. And it's kind of, I regret it, but now I'm kind of stuck with it, so yeah. Anyway, so my short presentation this morning is really to talk about this change from ICT to computing and to try and inspire you as to why this is actually quite a good thing. Because, you know, change is always difficult to manage, but why I personally and professionally believe that this change is a good one and going to stick for a while and worth investing time and energy into. So this is something I actually do with some Year 7 students when they join us at our secondary school, but I'll ask you to kind of play along. How many computers are there in your house? I ask them that question, I give them a slip of paper and get them to write it down. Think in your own head, chat to the person next to you, how many computers are in your house? Here's a computer, how many have you got? It's that simple. So I want to pick on some people. How many computers are in your house?
Well, probably one, but that's definitely not the right answer, is it?
There are a group of adults, you're second guessing me because I wouldn't be doing this if it was the right answer. But you're saying one, and that's the good thing, and that's what we're saying. So a lot of people say maybe one or two or three, they might have a laptop, and there's a Mac somewhere. But then, have you thought about the things that play computer games? And of course with children this is relevant, but I'm sure there are these in your house. Do you have an Xbox, a PlayStation, a Wii, whatever? And then if you add that to the number, you're suddenly, all right, I've got at least one of those, and that adds it up. And of course, if this definition is, oh, well, it can play computer games, then you need to think about the handheld ones, the teenagers certainly have got these. And we're already up to maybe at least half a dozen. And then, of course, if we can play computer games on it, then obviously the iPad or the tablet is a computer. And if we're going to talk about a tablet, then we're talking about phones as well. Not just smartphones, but actually even slightly older phones meet the definition of what a computer is. So how many do you think we're up to? There are other people in here who are way beyond 3, I'm sure. And the thing I do with the students, you know, they're already like, oh my God, and I'm like, yeah, even if it's worked but it's old and not used in a drawer, that still counts. And then we talk about all these things, like the sat-nav and the digital camera. I mean, they're computers. And if you've got a smart TV, it doesn't even have to be that smart, actually. As long as it's got one of these on-screen program guides, that's got a mini computer doing a bit of work inside. And then you've got your set-top boxes, and you've got the DVD player, and all of these things have got a small computer in them. And of course, you've got devices like this, and it doesn't have to be like this washing machine that has an app. Even a basic washing machine has a very, very simple processor in it to control when to let the water in and when to spin the drum. So, actually, there's a lot of computers in your house. Does anyone have a rough estimate in their head? They're thinking how many they've got? Because there is kind of an official average. 30. Well, the honest truth is that the average UK household has about 100 computers. And the important part, the definition of a computer, is that and some input and some output and some storage to keep instructions in. And so actually that goes over all sorts of things. Your fridge has one of these in to be able to keep it cool. This is the culprit. This is the microprocessor, the integrated circuit, the development of the last few decades that has allowed this to happen. And these microprocessors are not going anywhere. They are just getting more and more ubiquitous. Your car has loads of these in it now. And not just your car. This idea of the Internet of Things is coming, where we're going to have cat's eyes that tell the highways agency when they need servicing, because they're going to have a little bit of Wi-Fi or something in them.
I mean, it's incredible what's happening. And so one of the reasons focusing on computing is important is that these things are just everywhere. And we should be aware of that, really. So you can steal this activity if you like. It's a nice thing to do with children because they don't realise how many computers are in their life. I mean, they might start with quite a big number because they know they've got an iPad and they know they've got an iPhone in the house. But really, if you think about everything, it's enormous. This is an interesting statistic and segues on to another reason I think we should worry about this computing curriculum. ARM is a company that designs computer processors. They're a British company based in Cambridge. And when they first developed a processor, it was actually used in the Acorn Archimedes. So anyone who's been in education for a long time might remember those. The thing about ARM now, a small company based in Cambridge who designs processors, they don't manufacture them, that gets done out in the Far East a lot, but I mean, the ones you see these days are more likely to be badged like this. See, it says ARM up there, upside down. There are now more of these processors, more of these computer processors in the world than there are human arms, which I think is a really interesting statistic. So there are now twice as many of these on the planet as there are people. That's how ubiquitous this computing concept has got. There are so many mobile devices taking advantage of something that was made in Cambridge. And, you know, we're punching above our weight. Here's where else we punch above our weight. Does anyone know any of these famous people from history? Two of them are still alive. One of them's the internet. Yeah, no, you're right, of course. This is the World Wide Web guy. We'll start down here. This is Sir Charles Babbage. He invented several things. He invented the cow catcher that goes on the front of the train. Big iron thing. I don't think it catches cows so much as like... But the other thing he invented was the first ever mechanical computer. It was programmable, but it used gears and cogs. And you can go and look at one that they built in the Science Museum. These two guys worked together in the Second World War. Does anyone know who this is? Yeah, Alan Turing. And this is Tommy Flowers. He was a post office engineer who helped build this colossus, this first electrical programmable computer using valves. And of course, the story is that shortened the length of the war because they managed to break some codes with it. And then moving into more recent history, this is Sir Clive Sinclair, who I owe a debt to for providing computer games when I was a kid, but also kind of made computers something you could have in the home. And then this is Sir Tim Berners-Lee, who took two ideas that are already knocking around, which is hyperlinks and the internet, the way of connecting computers together, and made this thing called the World Wide Web. And the nice story about it is that he took this idea and said this needs to be an open standard that anyone can use for free. We're not going to license it. We're not going to charge for it. Anyone can use it. And he just gave the idea away. And of course, the World Wide Web now, we all know what that is, right? You've all been on a website. Okay. I like that he got a bit of recognition in the 2012 Olympic game opening ceremony because he was actually there and this whole "this is for everyone" thing in the stadium. But the important thing here is that these are all Brits. Yeah, he invented the computer, then he made an electrical one and shortened the length of the war, and then he invented a computer that only cost £100, and then he invented a way that everyone could use the internet in a usable manner. And they're all British. We are massively, massively punching above our weight. We always have, and here's the thing, shouldn't we keep doing that? Really? Yeah, we're at risk of losing it. And the government and other important people are recognising that and saying we should do something about this. And one of the things they're doing is saying, you guys should do something about this. So here's my point, who cares? This guy cares, and he's American. This is Eric Schmidt. He's the CEO of Google, so he's like one of the two boss men at Google. He actually came to a media conference in Edinburgh, and this is a long time ago, like 2008. He said, your ICT curriculum focuses on teaching how to use software, but gives no insight into how it's made. And he commented, he said, that is just throwing away your great computing heritage. An American came here and said, you guys aren't doing this right. You're famous for making computers, and you're not really teaching the children about computers. So, here we are. These reports came out. I think John Woolard might talk about them a little bit later, so I'll skip over them a little. But this was from the Royal Society. I think John might have even been in that. And then this is from NextGen and Nesta. And this NextGen report's quite interesting because it's actually from computer game companies and visual effect companies, the people who do the special effects for films. People think special effects for films are done in Hollywood. That's nonsense. Lots of them are done in Bournemouth. Yeah, and so you think, oh right, yeah, Gollum, that must be in America. No, that was done here. We are good at this stuff. And the same with the computer game industry. Whatever your personal opinion on computer games, it makes a lot of money, and we make loads of games. Things like Grand Theft Auto and all these terrible games are made here. They're made in Scotland, actually. So we want to preserve that. And we don't want all these tax breaks in Canada and France to steal the industry. We want it here, and actually the government have just given them a tax break, so that's good. But they haven't got enough talent to pick from. That's your problem, kind of. So eventually these lobbyists got the ear of this man when he was something to do with education. And eventually we turned this ship around a little bit. Now here's a really inspiring quote, I think, illustrated by a couple of children with a Raspberry Pi computer. But this quote, "A high-quality computing education equips pupils to use computational thinking," more in a minute, "and creativity to understand and change the world." To change the world. Does anyone know where that quote comes from? They may have read it before. I kind of hope everyone's read it before. It's the first sentence in the national curriculum for computing key stages 1 to 4. It's a good quote though, isn't it? I mean, that's the point. Whether you're familiar with it or not is irrelevant. The point is the people who wrote this curriculum, and I promise you it wasn't Michael Gove, he probably hasn't read it himself, the people who did write this do care about it, and what they've put in there is sensible, and I promise you it's sensible. The fact it's changed is a pain. The fact it's different is definitely a pain, but I don't believe it's going to change that much, because actually the things we're teaching here kind of worked in the 1950s. This is less subject to change than an ICT curriculum, because I've just thrown away a filing cabinet full of paper help sheets on how to use Microsoft Office 2003, because we have Microsoft Office 2010, and soon we're going to have Microsoft Office 2013. Thankfully that's not that different. But you know, if you're trying to keep up with this ICT, you're running a race you can never win. Whereas computers count in binary, and they do 1 and 0, and that's it. And that's the maths. And yes, you have to learn that maths, but once you've learnt it, that's it, and it's not changing, and it worked like that for Alan Turing, and it works like that for us. And until they get the quantum computer thing sorted, that's not going to change. And they're not getting on very well with that, because quantum computers can do 1 or 0, or 1 and 0 at the same time, unless you look at it, in which case it isn't. I don't understand quantum. Anyway, so we've got this new curriculum divided loosely into 3 sections. Information technology, computer science, and digital literacy. Information technology is kind of the hardware. It's that bit I did at the beginning. How many computers are actually in your life? Loads of them. How do you make them talk to each other? Let's learn a bit about that. Digital literacy we've been doing for ages, but it's more relevant than ever, particularly with things like social networks. I hope all schools are doing this anyway. It is the responsibility not of the ICT coordinator, by the way. It's the responsibility of the governors of the school to make sure there is some safeguarding and digital literacy going on in your school. So don't think it's on your shoulders if you're an ICT coordinator. Just pass it up. But digital literacy is still there. Yes, they need to know how to send an email. Yes, do that project work you're doing where they produce something on the computer from a project they've been doing, you know, that writing up of something to learn how to word process, definitely valuable. But there't this computer science bit now, and we're like, okay, they're 5. There's no escaping. This is a Wordle thing, a word cloud from the new curriculum, and programs is in there massively, and this programming idea is not going away. So it's not just about getting Scratch out, I hope, but principles of programming are important. The good news is there's only a few of them, and I don't expect them all to know them by the time they're 12, but there aren't that many to learn. Mark, who created Facebook, said, you just learn these lessons, and there aren't that many of them, and he's right. And you get to a point where you can do almost anything that you want. Here are 3 special words that are in the curriculum that are to do with it, and they're almost it. Sequence, doing one thing after the next. Selection, doing one thing or another. And repetition, which is repeating. That's it. That's it. You do that, and you can make anything. And that's the beauty of this. You don't even need any money anymore. You can beg, borrow, and steal the computer and the internet connection you need to make stuff, and you can make the next Facebook. I'm not saying you need to do that. I'm just saying there is no barrier. You've got like a superpower here. You can make a thing and give it to the entire world for free straight away, and then go, right, here we go. Right, I'm going to start charging for it. Whatever. It's amazing. But do we really need to be training every primary school child in this country, every pupil, to be a programmer. We don't need that many Mark Zuckerbergs, really. One's probably enough. But it's not about everyone's going to work in the IT industry. Yes, we've got a skills shortage. Yes, we can address that by inspiring young people to follow it further. But there are other benefits, and this is probably the most important thing, and the thing Computing at School would want me to say to you today. Everybody should learn how to program a computer because it teaches you how to think. It's not the only way to learn to think, but it's a particular way of thinking that's a useful tool. So the idea is that you think algorithmically. It's logical thinking. It's thinking logically. Computers can only think logically, and when you have to think about how to make a computer do something, you're thinking logically. Here are some other examples of thinking logically. Building stuff. Yeah? You need to break something down into an algorithm to build stuff. You can't just look at a house and go, oh, let's try making one of those. You need to, first of all, dig a trench and then lay some foundations and then da-da-da. Cooking. That's a useful skill. Follow a recipe. It's an algorithm. If I've made some food and I want to explain it to someone else, I need to break it down into steps so they can recreate it. So this logical thinking, far from being relevant only to computers, is relevant to everything. And actually, that skill, if we give children that skill, then we help them have a tool to know what to do when they don't know what to do. And my God, I wish my children would have that skill more and not just go, I want them to know what to do when they don't know what to do. Think it through, break it down, be logical about it. If your car is broken down, right, did I put any petrol in it? Can I hear the starter motor trying to turn round? Have I brought the key with me? All of these simple things that people kind of skip past a lot of the time. And actually, no, be a bit more resilient. Think logically, right, break it down. Keep calm and use a bit of logic. I think I'm going to wrap up there because I'm probably taking up all my time. So here's a nice flow chart that shows some logical thinking. I quite like that. Flow charts, big part of the computing curriculum, putting things into steps. But anyway, that's beside the point. Really, my message from my little bit this morning is to say that these microprocessors are everywhere and they're not going anywhere, whether you like it or not, unless we have like an apocalypse or something. Then we've got a different set of problems. Then this one comes in useful. We have a heritage in computing, and you have an opportunity to do something about that, and you'll be really proud if one of the geeky kids who came to your code club and wouldn't leave the computers alone at lunchtime turns out to be the next, I don't know, Mark Zuckerberg type person. It's like, oh yeah, by the way, I work for Apple now. It's like, oh right, that's cool. And most importantly, this isn't just about the geeks and the nerds and those kids. It's about everyone. There is something in this for everyone. And so embedding it into your curriculum, however you choose to do that, with discrete teaching, with embedding it into project work you already do, really valuable. I promise you this is valuable. It is worthwhile. Please tolerate the change and use things like today to help you work out how you're going to do it. Thank you very much.